Now that we're getting toward the end of the spring transfer portal period, let's highlight another defensive tackle in the transfer portal that LSU is making a big push for.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's up, y'all? Welcome into Locked On LSU. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also check us out on YouTube so you can watch the podcast in addition to listening to it. Just make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube page so you get up-to-date information on the latest from Locked On LSU. And other than subscribing, rate, review, comment, like, all of that great stuff. Always appreciate when you guys interact with the podcast. And of course, always appreciate you for being here and for making us your first listen every single day. All right, we're talking transfer portal. We're talking NFL draft. 6 LSU Tigers drafted in the 7 rounds of the NFL draft. So we'll get into all of that. But first, I have to let you know that today's edition of Locked On LSU is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. All right, let's get into it because today, Monday, is the second to last day that the spring transfer portal window is open. So tomorrow is the last day. If you're listening to this on Monday, it's tomorrow. Tuesday is the final day to enter the transfer portal. A reminder, I know so many of you listening already know this, but bear with me just for some of our newcomers. You can enter the transfer portal until tomorrow, but you don't have to decide where you're going tomorrow necessarily. You can if you want, but you don't have to. There's no really limit on that. That's really on player by player, program by program, coach by coach basis. So if by tomorrow LSU hasn't landed that defensive tackle, don't panic, because as long as that defensive tackle is in the transfer portal, that player can decide to commit to LSU or elsewhere for that matter, whenever they decide. So just a quick refresher there. But we know for a fact, Brian Kelly told us the defensive tackle is the number one priority for the Tigers in the transfer portal spring window. Now, enough players have entered the transfer portal from LSU's roster that it's freed up some scholarship space that if LSU does decide to go into the transfer portal for positions beyond defensive tackle, I mean, they have the scholarships available that would afford them to do so, whether it's adding depth at corner. A former NFL general manager once told me, you can never have enough corners. I'll take that, especially given the lack of cornerback depth that really kind of, bit LSU in the butt a little bit this past season. So whether they decide to add some offensive line depth, some cornerback depth, some linebacker depth, really running back depth, the depth can always serve you in any positions. But defensive tackle is obviously priority number one. We've highlighted a few players that LSU targeted, Philip Bleedy being one of them, but he has committed to Auburn. Simeon Barrow, the defensive tackle out of Michigan State, he has yet to commit, but of course, still on LSU's radar. And I have it on good authority that they're continuing to make a big push for him as well. But the latest on some defensive tackle targets in the transfer portal, Dominick Williams, the TCU defensive tackle, who was the number 2 defensive line transfer portal prospect in the spring transfer portal window. If you take a look at the list on 24/7 Sports or whatever recruiting website you decide to use, you might have to scroll a little bit until you find him. That's because he's buried underneath all of the fall transfer portal entries. But in the spring, the number 2 defensive line prospect in the transfer portal. So he's originally from California, but has spent the last 2 seasons at TCU and a 2-year starter at TCU. 6'2", 320 pounds, maybe a little bit on the shorter side, but really overall, that's a good defensive tackle size. That's D1, potentially even NFL D tackle size. Like I mentioned, he was a 2-year starter at TCU. This past season, recorded 33 tackles and 3 sacks in 13 games played, including their bowl game. And then in 2022, played 10 games in the regular season, 11 including the bowl game. And in those 11 games, Dominick Williams tallied 27 tackles, 1.5 sacks, and 1 forced fumble. So just looking at the numbers overall, a small step forward. in that sophomore season. But one thing that really sticks out to me about Dominick Williams, maybe compared to some other players that LSU is targeting or has targeted in the transfer portal, is Dominick Williams has 3 years of eligibility. That when you're looking at building a team versus building a roster. And I think that Brian Kelly's eyes are now set to building a program rather than just building a team for one single season. You might look at years of eligibility and prioritize that. Or you might look at years of eligibility, and that's kind of a tally in the positives column, because you don't want to constantly be going to the transfer portal every single year, because you're constantly recruiting transfer portal players with just 1 year of eligibility, or a transfer portal player that's going to end up just playing 1 year at LSU and then going to the NFL draft. No, you want to bring players in that are going to be part of the equation for the next few years. That is, the benefit of recruiting through the high school ranks and being able to hold on to those players, is those are positions that you don't have to worry about, that you don't have to constantly be going back to the transfer portal just to replenish and have bodies, because it's just basically a turnstile every single year. I also pointed this out, that LSU is not really in a position, specifically at the defensive tackle position, to be overly picky, to say, oh, you only have 1 year of eligibility. Like, no, thanks. No. Like, you need to be getting anyone through these doors that you can get that you think is going to be able to help you this season as a starter. But I think Dominick Williams has the best of both worlds, in that he has 2 years of Power 5 experience, but also has 3 years of eligibility remaining. I think that that's kind of the best of both worlds, perfect situation that you would be looking for. But look, LSU is not the only team high on Dominick Williams. I mean, he is going through the car wash of several programs across the country. He already visited Texas, Oklahoma, and Missouri this past week. Had a visit scheduled to Colorado over the weekend, canceled that visit. Originally had his visit to LSU scheduled for Tuesday, rescheduled it to Monday. So he is on LSU's campus, I believe, as we speak. So another name to keep an eye on, one of the most highly coveted and highly recruited prospects in the transfer portal at that position, Dominick Williams, the TCU defensive tackle. All right, let's continue the conversation, and we'll get into transfer portal prospects, maybe some players that aren't talked about a ton, but could be good fits for LSU, specifically to fit in those positions that aren't defensive tackle, but now can be addressed a little bit more in the transfer portal now that a few scholarships have opened up. We'll continue to get into that throughout the rest of the week. But I wanted to get into the NFL draft. We saw 6 LSU players drafted this past weekend. What I'm most looking forward to with each of these individual players as they get to the next level, we'll get into that coming up next after just a few words from our sponsors. Okay, I will admit it. I will admit it. Fine. I have a competitive side. I understand it. I acknowledge it, but my competitive side loves Monopoly Go. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there is so much to get. There's unique stickers that you can trade with friends to complete albums for huge prizes. There's also really cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with. I know that's one of my favorite parts of traditional Monopoly is, who's going to get the dog, who's going to get the top hat. You can still do that and enjoy some of your favorite parts of the traditional Monopoly game with Monopoly Go. Also, there's hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. That's the competitive side that comes through with me. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every single day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. Oh, so much fun. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything that you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now, free on Google Play or the App Store. Monopoly Go, game on. All right, rolling along here, Locked On LSU. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Do you have to turn down the volume with all of that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every single day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every single day. All right, so we had the NFL draft this past weekend. Thursday night, we saw Jayden Daniels, Malik Nabers, and Brian Thomas Jr. walk across the stage. Jayden Daniels, the second overall selection to the Washington Commanders. Malik Nabers, sixth overall to the New York Giants. And Brian Thomas Jr. heading to the Jacksonville Jaguars. A lot of moments, fun, cool moments from the NFL draft on Thursday night. Had a cute little moment with Brian Thomas Jr.'s mom on the ABC broadcast. I'm sure you've seen it. I mean, went viral on social media. Laura Rutledge asked his mom, "How far has this family come?" And she said, "From Baton Rouge, Louisiana." She ain't wrong. Laura Rutledge asked her, "How far did y'all come?" She said, "We came from Baton Rouge." She ain't wrong. Mama said it. Mama meant it. But a lot of fun moments that night. And overall, just a really cool reflection of this past season, what those three meant to this LSU team this past season, how fun they were to watch. But let's take a look at the draft as a whole. 6 LSU Tigers selected throughout the 7 rounds of the NFL draft. Like I mentioned, 3 in the first round. Maason Smith going in the second round, 48th overall to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, I thought Maason Smith should have gone that high. I just didn't expect him to. I thought maybe some NFL general managers would have been a little bit turned off by the lack of production or maybe the injury. But no, Maason Smith, the 4th LSU Tiger off the board, the first after the first round. We also saw Maason Smith I just mentioned Maason Smith. Jordan Jefferson go in the 4th round also to the Jacksonville Jags. So it feels like the Jags are becoming like the Cincinnati Bengals 2.0 because they're like the second team to become LSU 2.0, NFLSU, if you will. And then Mekhi Wingo falling to the 6th round, ultimately selected by the Detroit Lions. A lot later than I expected Mekhi Wingo to go. I'll be completely honest with everybody, but I expected Mekhi Wingo really to go no later than the 4th, maybe even the 5th. I know there were some height concerns with Mekhi Wingo, 6 feet, not necessarily NFL type of height or size. There's also some concerns about the medicals. Of course, we know Mekhi Wingo underwent surgery throughout the middle of the season this past year, which also affected his production. Later, a lot later than I thought for Mekhi Wingo, but honestly, I think that's going to be a steal. I think that's going to be huge for Detroit. But for right now, I want to focus in on the first round draft picks and Jayden Daniels, Malik Nabers, and Brian Thomas Jr. One thing that I mentioned on a podcast last week, and I'll reiterate here, seeing those draft picks, 3 picks in the first round, 2 in the top 10, make me hate Matt House even more. And now Maason Smith and Jordan Jefferson are heading right back into the Matt House fire in Jacksonville. I know Matt House is the linebackers coach. He's not going to have anything to do with a couple of defensive tackles, but still, it's like, man, those two poor things can't escape from him. But I want to focus in on the first round draft picks. What I'm most looking forward to with all of them, what I'm most looking forward to seeing them develop and showcase on the biggest stage in football on Sundays. One thing I mentioned on a podcast last week when I was highlighting some of Jayden Daniels' best fits, best landing spots, Washington was one of them. And obviously, that's where he ended up, second overall pick to the Washington Commanders. And the reason why I thought that he was going to be a good fit in Washington was because of their offensive coordinator, Cliff Kingsbury. You know him, you know the name, you know the track record. I'm most excited to see what Cliff Kingsbury is able to do with Jayden Daniels' skill set. Just given Cliff Kingsbury's history of being able to, not take away from, but supplement and emphasize the strengths of mobile quarterbacks that are really at their best when they're either off platform or off schedule in situational football. Where does Patrick Mahomes make his money? In the red zone on third down. When did we see Jayden Daniels really thrive? It was on third down. I mean, for example, Jayden Daniels completed 72% of his passes on third down. And he was even better when it was third and long situations. I mean, I'm sure Cliff Kingsbury is salivating at the opportunity to be able to, work with the obvious, just raw talent that Jayden Daniels has. The talent that had been, morphed and shaped into an NFL passer in his second season at LSU, and now taking it even a step further. Of Cliff Kingsbury's innate ability to be able to work with mobile quarterbacks, but not dilute mobile quarterbacks, if you know what I'm saying. Being able to emphasize and accentuate Jayden Daniels' strengths in the run game and being able to kind of fine tune that for the next level. Because, yeah, I mean, Jayden Daniels in the run game was electric, but he also took a lot of hits. And he's not going to be able to do that as consistently at the NFL level as he did in college. In fact, like if I'm an NFL owner that's investing in the future of my franchise, I don't want him taking any of those hits, period. So, how do you try to work with Jayden Daniels, slide a little bit more, don't take some of those hits, you know, instill the understanding in him that he doesn't always have to be Superman, that he doesn't always have to play hero ball, that it doesn't have to just be him making every single play while not taking Superman's cape away from him. I think that there is no better person in football that can help him do that than Cliff Kingsbury. We've seen him do it with Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech. We saw him do it with Johnny Manziel at Texas A&M. We saw him do it with Kyler Murray in Arizona. Now, I'll admit, I'm not the biggest Kyler Murray fan, but I do think that Cliff Kingsbury was able to get the most out of Kyler Murray. I don't know about his future as an NFL quarterback, but I love Cliff Kingsbury's offensive mind paired with Jayden Daniels' ability. I'm super, super excited to watch that unfold in his first season in Washington. I will say Washington needs a few more weapons for Jayden Daniels. Need to protect him. Protect that man. Because he's a tough son of a gun, but he's a little bitty little thing. And Washington didn't have the best offensive line this past season. Washington was ranked, I think, maybe third or fourth in the league in sacks given up. So that's not good. Not good at all. Now, Jayden Daniels will be able to escape some of those pressures just because that's how good he is and that's what makes him so special. That's what makes his legs so special. But you're going to have to protect that man and you're going to have to give him some weapons. Part of what made LSU's offense this past season so electric, as you know, as an LSU fan listening, is the Brian Thomas and Malik Nabers' innate ability to get open and get open downfield. Now, can Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin do that? We shall see. And I'm excited to see what Jayden Daniels does under the development of Cliff Kingsbury, who, of course, is now the offensive coordinator in Washington. I want to get into what I'm most looking forward to with Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Nabers and their first season in the NFL. And we will get into that coming up next after just a couple of words from our sponsors. All right, let me tell you about FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and the NHL. Baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every single game. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. And you can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and so easy to use. So if you're looking for something to bet on in the Stanley Cup playoffs, I do Sports Talk Radio in Nashville. The Predators are in the playoffs, and Brock Besser had a hat trick against the Nashville Predators on Sunday night. Brock Besser, who plays for the Vancouver Canucks, he has been electric all playoffs long. So if you're looking for something to put some money on Tuesday night, I'm looking at Brock Besser as an anytime goal scorer against the Nashville Predators on Tuesday night. But hey, that's my take. That's how I would do it, but do it how you would do it. Just do it with FanDuel. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/locked on and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. I also want to tell you about Game Time. So, Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. I'm heading home to St. Louis this weekend, and I am so excited to see my family. I'm also so excited to see the St. Louis Cardinals. And I was talking with my family about when are we going to get tickets or how are we going to get tickets. I said, don't worry. We'll check Game Time, and we can go to Game Time even just minutes, hours before first pitch, and we're going to find the best price. We're going to see a 360-degree view of exactly what our seats are going to look like. And I know with Game Time, it's going to be such an easy process. It literally takes 3 clicks of a button, or, clicks on your thumb of your phone, and you'll instantly get those tickets sent to you. It is such an easy experience. You get seat views, and the best part, you're getting a great price. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, rolling along here, Locked On LSU. Thanks again for making us your first listen every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Rolling along here, some reactions from NFL Draft Night. Again, 6 LSU players selected in the NFL Draft, 3 in the first round: Jayden Daniels, Malik Nabers, and Brian Thomas Jr. in that order. One thing that I'm looking forward to with Brian Thomas Jr., frankly, if I had to pick one player in this draft that I feel like is going to have one player from LSU in this draft, rather, let me clarify, that I think is going to have the biggest rookie season, I'm putting my money on Brian Thomas Jr. And that's nothing against the abilities of any of these other players. I just think that Brian Thomas Jr. is stepping into the best situation. And as we don't talk enough, frankly, about, it's that rookies and their ability and their projection in their first couple of seasons have a lot to do with what's around them. Shocking, right? The reason why I don't think it'll be Malik Nabers is because I think he's stepping into a pretty fishy situation with the New York Giants. Is Daniel Jones going to be the quarterback? Is he not? I don't think the Giants are sold on him. I don't think like Nabers is sold on him, because he did tell CBS Sports, yeah, the Giants are cool once they get the quarterback situation figured out. So I think that the Giants offense is just kind of a mess, and it's a mess that Malik Nabers can't fix himself. He's a wide receiver. His production depends on the production of the quarterback. I think they'll finally figure it out. I think Malik Nabers is going to be a fantastic player in the league. But when we're just focusing on the rookie seasons, Brian Thomas Jr. is stepping into a Jacksonville Jaguars offense with an established quarterback who has been solid, not elite, but solid throughout his career in Jacksonville, and Trevor Lawrence. And he's also stepping into a role that feels pretty carved out for him. The Jags lost Calvin Ridley in free agency this past season. Calvin Ridley was kind of their deep threat burner. Well, Brian Thomas Jr. is a deep threat, and he's a burner, and he can add even more speed to that Jags offense, because as we know, Calvin Ridley's getting a little bit older. As you get older, you lose the speed. So Brian Thomas Jr. is almost like a refreshed sense of speed into that deep passing game. And Jacksonville had a pretty solid passing game this past season, 13th in yards per game in the NFL. So not elite, but pretty solid. So I think that Brian Thomas Jr. is just fitting into an offense that already has a place carved out for him, where Malik Nabers is stepping into a situation that's a little bit mucky, a little bit more of a question mark. And Jayden Daniels, look, your rookie season as a quarterback in the NFL is going to be hard, especially when you're drafted by a team that was one of the worst teams in the NFL this past season. And it's not like Washington is barren of talent. Like I just mentioned, they've got Terry McLaurin, they have Jahan Dotson in the passing game. They just picked up Austin Eckler in the run game, who also can catch passes out of the backfield. So it's not like they're barren of talent, but it's a lot of change for a young quarterback in the NFL, learning a new offense, stepping into a new locker room with new expectations. There's just a lot on your plate. So I can't expect that, Jayden Daniels is going to have an MVP season in his rookie year. But I do think that under Cliff Kingsbury, he's going to be incredibly successful. But I'm also looking at that Jacksonville defensive line. Trayvon Walker, the first overall pick in the 2022 draft. Josh Allen, not the quarterback, the pass rusher, Josh Allen, who was the 7th overall pick in the 2018 draft. He was a top 10 pick. And then add Maason Smith, Sheesh. That's going to be a force to be reckoned with. So I think that's going to be fun to watch as well. But overall, just excited to see a new, fresh batch of LSU players playing on Sundays because it feels like no matter where you are, no matter what game you're watching, you're going to see a couple of familiar names and faces coming out from LSU. But that's going to do it for me today. Thank you again for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Coming up on tomorrow's edition of Locked On LSU, let's continue to take a look into the transfer portal. Any players at positions not at defensive tackle that could help supplement LSU's team and be an impact player this year. We'll get into that coming up on tomorrow's edition of Locked On LSU.